Welcome students. Today we are going to discuss about a new topic in our research session. I am Dr. Ritvik J. Gandhe and I belong to Department of Social Work and welcome to this new lecture on research methods. Today we are going to discuss about the formulation of hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? How a hypothesis can be created? What are the different types of research hypothesis? All these questions we will try to find answers of. Hypothesis creation is a part of a research process. It is a part and parcel of the research process. Why do we really need to create a hypothesis? Is because we want to test certain assumptions and we want to conclude certain things. If we do not formulate the hypothesis, probably the research, especially the quantitative way of research, is not possible at all. And also it is the gateway of inferential statistics. With the way of hypothesis testing procedures, we really enter into the realm of inferential statistics. Things like inferential statistics, statistical hypothesis testing procedures, etc., that will follow subsequently. But even before that, what we really need to learn is how to formulate hypothesis. What is the hypothesis? So today's lecture is particularly dedicated to the introduction part of the hypothesis. As you know, that a research process is basically having different stages. First is you identify the problem. Second is you do some background study, background research. Then you go on to formulate a hypothesis, which is a third stage. In case you are doing a quantitative research only, in that case it applies. Fourth is, based on your hypothesis, you do the statistical procedure for the testing of hypothesis and then you do the analysis of the result, and based on your results you either reject or conclude the hypothesis. So this is basically the research procedure in nutshell. Now as you know, here we discussed about hypothesis in this procedure in third stage, and before all these things we have discussed these things in our previous lectures. Now we really move on to the introduction part of the hypothesis. So what are the defining characteristics of hypothesis? There are basically three defining characteristics of hypothesis. Number one is, hypothesis is formulated to actually explain a phenomena. Second thing, it should always be testable. It is a statement which is subject to testing, so it should be formulated in a way that it can be tested. The third important characteristic, which is a defining characteristic, is that it is based on certain previous observations. If the hypothesis is not based on previous observations, it can be termed as fluke or just a statement without any scientific basis. So in order to make a statement a really scientific one, you really need to make it based on a certain studies. So that is only we consider as a hypothesis. The next thing is, again you see, hypothesis is a claim or statement about a property of a population. So it can be understood as a claim or a statement also. Next thing is, hypothesis test is a standard procedure. Now the details of the procedure will be told to you in the subsequent lectures, but for this moment you should know that this is a detailed procedure always associated with it. The next thing furthermore is, hypothesis is a tentative prediction. It is again a very important defining characteristic of a hypothesis, that it is a tentative prediction. It may be accepted, it may not be accepted. It may lead to creation of a new theory, it may not lead to creation of a new theory. It all depends on the results, but it is a tentative statement. Therefore, it is a tentative. Next thing is, it is basically a research question, but rather in a form of an assumption. Or you can say that a research question is basically a hypothesis only, but in the form of a question. So this close is the relationship is there between research question and hypothesis. So we can say that once you have really identified your hypothesis, or once you have really formulated your hypothesis, you have really reached to a level in your research journey, because just after that you are very close to your analysis and testing procedures. So formulation of hypothesis is a significant stage in a research. Now again, if you want to really understand the types of hypothesis, then we can see there are number of classifications exist. Because every single scholar, every single author has a view of looking at things. So hypothesis also can be understood in a different classifications. First, people talk about directional versus non-directional, people talk about null versus alternative, people talk about research hypothesis versus general hypothesis. So like that, there are a number of classifications that exist. So first of all, we should know that what is the basic classification of a hypothetical statement. First, research hypothesis can be classified into two, that is general hypothesis or the research hypothesis. Now we discuss the first type of classification, that is general versus statistical. The general hypothesis can again be further divided into two, that is universal hypothesis and existential hypothesis. Statistical hypothesis can be divided into three sections. First is null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis and research hypothesis. Now all these types of hypothesis could have subtypes also, but in a nutshell we need to understand this particular framework. Again, the same framework can be understood in a different way, that some scholars say that okay, hypotheses only have two types. First is research, either they are research based or they are alternatives. So some scholars say that there are only two major types of hypothesis, that is research hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Now as I told you that these are just two different ways of looking at the same thing, but basically these are the things. In this classification of research versus alternative hypothesis, research hypothesis can be understood in three ways. First is hypothesis of difference, second is hypothesis of point prevalence, and third is hypothesis of association. Now again, as I told you, these are just mere terminologies. The thing is, you will yourself come to know that when you talk about associations between the variables, then it becomes an association hypothesis. When you talk about the point prevalence, it means some other attribute or characteristics when we discuss or assume, then it becomes the point prevalence kind of a hypothesis. And when we talk about of no difference, kind of that x is not at all related to y and things like that, then it becomes a null sort of a hypothesis. So these are different things and different classifications. Now what is important here is that we really need to know that three basic classifications, three basic rather types of hypothesis. And the first is directional, either hypothesis is a directional one, second is non-directional and it may not have a direction, and the third is null. So these are the most widely used three different types of hypothesis. Again, some people have explained these things. Now in order to really know what is directional, non-directional, null, let us discuss some of the examples of these hypotheses. So first is, if you assume a direction between the variables in the relationship of variables, then it becomes a directional hypothesis. And if you do not assume a direction in the relationship of the variables, then it becomes a non-directional hypothesis. So it is as simple as that. But by and large, you always have to assume a relationship between variables. Then only the statement will be considered as a hypothesis or a research based hypothesis. Now let us have a look at some of the examples of null hypothesis first. The first picture is talking about a cat watching two different shapes of food products, and our hypothesis is that regardless of the type of the shape of the food, the cat has no inclination towards it. I mean, whether it's a heart shaped food or it's a square shaped or some other shaped food, cat has no inclination. So there is no difference between the inclination of a cat and the type of food. So whenever you assume or you try to assume a relationship between two variables in a way that there is no difference or there is no relationship or there is no difference between A and B or X and Y, then such types of statements can be considered as null hypothesis. The second picture you can see is that again is the same example of null hypothesis, that depending upon the light, there is no difference between the growth of the plants. And in the third picture, you can see that age has really no difference with the artistry or the mastery over music. So, in all these three examples, what we are assuming is that there is no relationship between a particular variable x and a particular variable y. So, that is precisely the structure of this. So, any statement having a structure like there is no difference between x and y, or there is no relationship between x and y, that kind of statement is understood as a null hypothesis. Now, some more examples if you would like to have, then these are here. The question is, are teens better at math than adults? Then the null hypothesis will be, age has no effect on mathematical ability. Just as the previous example, age has no effect on the musical ability, there is an example now here that age has no effect on the mathematical ability. In a similar fashion, there are other examples also. If the question is, do teens use cell phones to access the internet more than the adults? Then your null hypothesis would be, age has no effect on how cell phones are used for internet access. So, there is no relationship between the internet access on phone and the age of the candidate. So, in a similar way, you can have a look at other examples in the same slide. But what I am trying to essentially tell you, that you need to really capture the fact that whenever you do not assume anything between the variables, that is a null hypothesis, and yet it is known as assumption. So, it is a kind of assumption where you do not assume anything at all. Got it? Now, the next important concept which you should be really clear about is the directional versus non-directional category of hypothesis. Now, you see, once again I will tell you that research hypothesis, as I told you, all these null, directional, non-directional, all these hypotheses are part of a research hypothesis, and these are all basically very much statistical types of hypothesis, because they are subject to testing statistically. The directional hypothesis is simply when you assume a direction in the relationship of two variables. So, first of all, you need to assume a relationship, then you need to assign a direction also to that relationship. So, directional hypotheses are one-tailed, but they are basically when you assume a relationship between two variables, when you assume a direction to a relationship. A simple example can be, participants can memorize things more when they are given the pictures rather than words. There are two groups of participants, group 1 and group 2, and you have given certain study material in forms of pictures to group 1, and you have given some study material in forms of words to group 2, and then you are simply assuming before starting your experiment of your research that okay, group 1, since they are having the pictures, they can retain whatever has been given to them more than the group 2. So, that is a simple assumption, but there is a direction to this assumption. You are clearly saying that pictures are better learning tools than words. So, it means you are clearly assuming a direction or a relationship. First of all, you are assuming a relationship, and then you are trying to say that pictures have a better effect on the learning. So, that is an example of a directional hypothesis. Again, if you see the difference between one-tailed and two-tailed. Now, what is the difference between one-tailed and two-tailed? It is very, very simple. First of all, you should know that one-tailed hypothesis is basically where the direction is very clear. If you are assuming a statement where the direction is very clear, why it is actually described as one-tailed? Because when you have a creature in face of you which has a tail and a face, then you really know which is the front side and which is the back side. So, you really know the direction of that particular creature. So, that is why one-tailed hypotheses have a very clear-cut direction. For example, a happy dog will eat more. So, this is an assumption that happiness and eating. So, if you are more happy, then you will eat more. So, this kind of an assumption, it is a very clear-cut direction. So, it is a one-tailed directional hypothesis. And there are two-tailed hypotheses also, but then in two-tailed hypothesis, it is like a dual face. You really don't know which is the real direction, which is the real face, which is the real way of progression, or which way it would really head to. So such a direction, such directional hypothesis is where there are two possible directions. They can be understood as a two-tailed. For example, you can see in this picture, when there are one relationship that you are assuming and there could be two directions possible. So for example, mood affects the appetite of a dog. Now that's an assumption, so it's a hypothesis, and then you are assuming between the two things, mood and appetite. So again it's a two-tailed hypothesis, because the face of this hypothesis, the real direction of the hypothesis is not known. We are just saying mood has effect on appetite, but how and which way, larger than, smaller than, this, that, there is no direction you have assigned to, and it's a two-tailed. So one-tailed is very much directional, and two-tailed is there could be any direction. So we don't know possible directions, one out of two. Okay, but there is a great significance attached to this particular concept of one-tailed and two-tailed in terms of statistics. When we go for statistical testing procedures, there is a separate procedure for testing one-tailed and two-tailed. Procedure could be same, but then the concept is very much different. We will discuss all these things when we discuss about the probability curve and then the area of rejection, area under the probability, all those concepts when we will discuss, we shall discuss these things as well. For the moment, we go ahead with our discussion on hypothesis. So few more examples of directional and non-directional hypothesis are given for your understanding. The non-directional hypotheses are typical statements which start like there was an effect, or there is an effect, or there is a difference between x and y, this is larger than this is smaller than this, shorter, greater than. When you really have such statements in place of your assumptions, then you better understand that it's a non-directional research hypothesis. And a directional one could be when you really give the direction to the difference. So assuming that there is a difference between x and y is a non-directional. Assuming that there is no difference between x and y is null. And assuming that x is greater than y, or y is greater than x, or anything like that, is basically a directional hypothesis. Okay, then this is some of the mathematical notations for this non-directional and directional hypothesis. Normally the null hypothesis is denoted as H naught. People call it also H0, but the H naught is more popular and more appropriate. Then H1 is basically alternative hypothesis. And these days many researchers, because they not only assume one or two hypotheses, rather they assume the set of hypotheses. So what they do is essentially they assume H1, and then within the first hypothesis there are different relationships they assume between the variables. So they term it like H1A, H1B, H1C, etc. But then H0 and H1. So null versus alternative. And the same notations are applicable for the directional hypothesis as well. But the thing is, in directional hypothesis, greater than, less than, and any signs of mathematics can be used. But in the non-directional, you just simply either use equal to or non-equal to, because you don't know the direction, you are not assigning any direction. The same thing can have two different hypotheses. So for example, experimenter predicts that one group will do better than the other in an experimental setup, then you can assume a null hypothesis also, that there is no difference between group A and group B, and you can also conduct the same experiment with the another assumption, that is the group 1 will do better than group 2, or group 2 will do better than group 1. So what I am essentially trying to convey here is that what way you assume does not have a direct impact on your research, but your assumption have to be in a manner that really leads you to certain conclusions. So the way you choose your hypothesis is very much important. That's why in the beginning of this session I told you that the formulation of hypothesis is a very important thing. Finally, I would like to conclude this lecture by saying that understanding formulation of hypothesis is very important part of research. Why? Because it will lead to certain important concepts, namely type 1 and type 2 error, inferential statistics, statistical testing procedures. So all these things would follow once you really form the hypothesis. So all these things we will discuss in the subsequent lectures. Therefore, it is very important to understand what we have discussed today, and hereafter we will discuss things little bit mathematically and statistically. So all the best to all of you. Thank you very much.